We are live.
Oh, wow. Okay, cool.
Okay, wonderful. All right, thanks, Melina, for joining us. Yeah, here
Thank
we
you.
are, and hopefully, what is nearing the end of this pandemic. Phase one, anyways, is that we're
Yeah.
transitioning into, and we always love having you and featuring you because you really do. You bring such excellent information, and I know I always receive so much great feedback for those that attend your classes. And this is our second webinar that we've done. First one was part of the community immunity series. I know you
Oh,
were a
yeah.
highlight there,
Yeah.
and I wanted to get you on. And this to me is so important at this time. There's a lot of concepts being thrown out there. People are
Yeah.
being asked to, understand, what is going on. But yet the reality is many of us don't actually really know truly how our immune system works and how we can better support ourselves. So I just want to thank you in advance for being on the call here with us and sharing with us this vital information that's
Yeah.
so fundamental to each of us, especially now in this day and age. And really, you come from a place of education, proaction, empowering people. And I know at your clinic, the Advanced Naturopathic Clinic here in the northwest of Calgary, you're doing amazing work, working one-on-one. You've got a team of practitioners. You guys are back open. So I'm really
Yay. Okay.
grateful, and I'm sure
Yes.
you are as
We're
well. And I'm
yes, we're happy about that too. Yeah.
sure all your clients are so happy.
Yeah.
And yeah, so Melina has a presentation she's going to walk us through. And if you're watching, whether you're watching live, whether you're going to watch the replay afterwards, please do post comments down below, and myself and Melina will get to those. We'll be able to answer those and share this information widely with your friends. Melina is very generously offering her time, her expertise. She's going to show you a slide of her credentials. They're very long. She's very learned, and she's quite sought after. I know this pandemic, as serious as it is kind of dampered some of your plans. I know you had plans to go to New York. You're about to do a TEDx.
Yeah.
You are an international speaker. You do travel the world. Puerto Rico, different locations to share your wisdom.
Yeah, pretty honored always to be able to speak around the world on a topic that I love, which is
Yeah.
health. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So let's dive in. So yeah, if you want
Okay.
to go ahead, you pull up the slideshow there,
Okay.
and
Let's
we'll
figure out how to do this.
yeah. All right. And again, yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. Just hit a like, hit a share, and ask your questions anytime. And here we go. Let's dive in.
Okay. Let's move us aside. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. That works. All right. So I'm going to be talking about our immune system and how it works and how we can make it work even better. And if I can figure out how to advance my screen. Do you know how to make this advance? Oh, I guess maybe here.
Yep.
Yeah,
There
there
you
we
go.
go. There we go. Does everyone see this picture? Because is this covering stuff?
No. Yeah. We can. I can see it all. Yeah.
Okay.
You're
Okay.
just in
Just
the
want to
top
make sure.
right.
Okay, so I don't know if it's, because for me, it looks like my stuff is covering it. But anyways, this is a little bit about me, but like my actual story starts as a child. Because as a kid, I was this kid who had really bad allergies and eczema, and I'd break out in rashes to everything I ate. And when I went out into the environment, even the grass I was allergic to. And when I was about 13 years old, a family friend said to my parents, you should try taking her to see a naturopathic doctor. And back then, honestly, we had no idea what a naturopathic doctor was. We didn't know what they did. We didn't know if they could actually help me. But we went in with an open mind and we wanted to just give it a try. And within a few short months, all of my allergies cleared up. And to me, it was like magic. And it was, we didn't really understand how it all worked. And this was really a major influence is why I wanted to become a doctor, because I wanted to be able to help people like myself so they didn't have to suffer unnecessarily like I did for many years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's a question for all of you. when a person, oh, I'm shifting ahead, sorry. Okay, so let's think of it even before all of this like coronavirus pandemic issue. Is this just moving ahead on its own? How do I get it to not do that?
Right.
Sorry, my screen is moving ahead on its own. So let me.
Good. Technical difficulty.
I know. I'm like, how do I? Let's do this share again. And I'm like, I think we just do. Okay.
All right, let's go from there.
Yeah. Oh, see, why is it moving ahead before it lets me talk? Do you know why that's happening?
What about, no, not present view.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, all good. Yeah, this is new for me as well here, so.
Okay, because it's moving ahead without me pressing anything. So it's not letting me chat.
So what's that one in the middle? You got the two arrows, that's an edit. What's that kind of like paper thing there? If you click that, what does it do?
That's a good question. What's that paper do? Pause?
There you go. You could pause it each time.
Okay.
So you want to go, I think you want to, yeah, there we go.
And then we'll pause. Okay. Well, I'll just do it that way.
Glorious, but yeah, thanks for everyone working with us, the patience.
Yeah, sorry guys. I don't know why this keeps moving ahead. But anyways, like I want to think of what it's like before all of this coronavirus, and if you had a person who had a cold and they entered a crowded room. Now, if this happened, would everyone in the room get sick? And here's the answer. The answer is no. Let's pause this. It won't let me pause.
Uh-oh.
Okay, well, maybe it'll pause just for me. Okay, so why is it that everyone who's exposed to an infection doesn't get sick? Or why is it that one person gets sick, but another person doesn't? There must just be more to this virus or to any virus that is causing a person to get sick. Now, here's some facts. There are, oh man, sorry guys, I can't talk with my hands. I got to focus on controlling this.
There we are.
So, oh, now I'm getting an echo. So there are thousands of different strains of bacteria and virus that enter our environment daily. So we're basically tons of viruses in our ecosystem that we're coming across. And it's our body's internal environment that actually determines how susceptible we're going to be to infections. And in order for an infection to survive and thrive and cause symptoms within our body, we need an environment within our body that will actually nourish that. And that's important for us to really understand. And that's what I really want to get into. So our best defense, against an infection is actually our very own immune system. Look at that. Okay, so here's a question for you. do you believe that it's possible for us to be able to build a resilient, well-functioning immune system? And I want you to think about that for a minute in terms of, you know, like if you go by what our government tells us, our government is telling us that there's nothing we can do to boost our immune system. We just need to hide in our houses and hide away. And, you know, is that what you believe? Is that what you think, that the only defense is for you to hide away in your house and that
use hand sanitizer?
Yeah, exactly. Hand sanitizers and masks. And that's the only way that we can protect ourselves.
Yeah.
And
yeah, I would point out, I mean, obviously I jest, but you know, I mean, those are useful in the right situation, but
yeah.
You know, I totally get where you're going.
Yeah. So I think it's an important question to ask. Now the benefits, let's see if we can pause this. Now, the immune system is not something that I just started talking about. I've been talking about the immune system really for a long time. And the reason that the immune system is so important is not, so one major thing is a protection against infections, but it's also in terms of preventative for allergies and eczema. So when I told you about me as a kid, this is me having a strong immune system would have actually been protective for me in terms of allergies and eczema. And protection against chronic, let's go back. Sorry, guys. Let's pause this. Because this is also really important, that when we have a strong immune system, it's also protective against chronic diseases. And it has the ability to be able to kill off cancerous cells. And to me, this is such an important story sort of thing, because this is something really personal to me. You know, my dad was diagnosed with cancer when I was in second year of the Naturopathic college. And at that point, I really didn't know enough. I didn't know enough to be able to help him. And I dove into the research to just try to figure out what was going on to be able to help him. But in the end, I wasn't able to. He passed away 9 short months later. And there's definitely a lot that I learned, and I definitely started doing a ton of research into how to treat cancer. But there's also a lot of things that I learned in that process. Is that one of the things was that my dad was, you know, 6 months prior to my dad being diagnosed with terminal cancer, he had some annual blood work done, where that annual blood work showed, like, his annual blood work by conventional standards was all within normal range. He was told that he was the picture of health. So by all of those measures, or smoke, he exercised, he ate, you know, what would be considered a conventional healthy diet. And, you know, and he still ended up with a terminal cancer. So to me, it made me realize that the conventional way of looking at things was not necessarily the best way to assess disease processes. So I want to talk about what does a well-functioning immune system actually look like? Because we keep talking about, you know, a virus, pathogens within our body. And as we talk about it, we're talking about it like, oh, we don't understand it. It's foreign. But what we need to know is that our bodies, our immune systems have a very specific way of how it handles pathogens and viruses when it comes into our body. It's you know, our bodies recognize when it needs to get rid of something. So I want to go through that pathway with you, because I think that a lot of people are misunderstanding what our systems are actually doing. So we have these things called macrophages, and these macrophages are circulating throughout our entire body. And they are just looking for pathogens, anything that shouldn't be there. And what happens is that when those macrophages see something like a virus, it engulfs it, sort of like a Pac-Man. So you can see it's just eating it. And then what it does is it takes little pieces of that virus and it puts it on these receptor sites on the actual cell membranes of that. You can see those there, just on the cell membrane of that cell, of that macrophage. And then what we have is we have these T cells, and these T cells will come up to those receptor sites, and they will take that particle, take that information, and then they will put all of those particles on the outside of their cell membranes. And so what happens is so now we have this T cell that is looking around the body for this infectious agent. And then what the body does is it creates a whole bunch of these T cells. So our body's actually creating and mounting an immune response and creating like an army that's all looking for this infectious agent. So they all know what they're looking for. And then when we got this, the T cell, when it actually sees that infectious agent, what it does is it then activates cytokines. And cytokines, there's kind of two kinds of cytokines. And cytokines sometimes get a bad name, but what we need to know is we need these cytokines. They're actually very important. So we have pro-inflammatory cytokines, and what those pro-inflammatory cytokines are doing is they are actually breaking down that pathogen or that infectious agent. And then we have the anti-inflammatory cytokines that actually clean that whole space up. So I think we always talk about that anti-inflammatory, that how important those are, but we actually need both, and we need a balance of the two kinds of cytokines. So what you can see is that in order for this inflammatory response to be working well, it needs to be very targeted. So we need those cytokines to be able to see that infectious agent and break it down if the immune system is working appropriately. But what can happen is that we can have an insufficient inflammatory response, where we have these cytokines that will, the response is low. So it sees that infectious agent, but because it's low, it's either not effectively able to kill off that infectious agent, or it doesn't kill off all of the ones that it sees. So this is what happens if we have not enough of an inflammatory response. And then we can have those cytokine response, we can have an overstimulated inflammatory response. And when this happens, this is when it's not as targeted. So it'll kill off that infectious agent, but it may also kill off some of those healthy cells. And this is what we see, when we're talking about this infectious agent, we keep hearing the term cytokine storm. So this is what a cytokine storm is. It's when we have an overstimulated inflammatory response. And it's also what happens when you have autoimmune disease. It's when you have breakdown of good, healthy tissues. So in order for us to have a well-functioning immune system, we have to have a targeted response. And then we also have to have cytokines that have a proper on-off switch. So it's when we have proper pro-inflammatory cytokines that are released, and then we know when to turn that off and to turn on the anti-inflammatory cytokines. So this is how a well-functioning immune system works. So now, what can happen that can disrupt this from happening, from us having? So how does a well-functioning immune system get disrupted? All right. So how it gets disrupted is that we can actually have breaches, so holes in the digestive tract. And within the cells that line our digestive tract, there's just a 1 cell deep layer of lining of the digestive tract, of the mucous membranes. And what holds those cells together are things called tight junctions. And what can happen is that we can have damage to those tight junctions. And so then we have spaces between those cells. So then we have food that's not completely digested, or toxins that are within the lumen of our digestive tract can now make their way into our bloodstream. And when they're in our bloodstream, this is when we can elicit a whole immune response, and we get a whole bunch of inflammatory cytokines, because what's happening is that the body is saying, this is foreign substances coming into the body. This is food that's not completely digested, ending up in the bloodstream, so not making its way through through the digestive tract. And this elicits a whole immune response. And so this is a huge disruption to the immune system. So when this happens, this can cause our immune system to not function as well as it should. You know, this will disrupt our well-functioning immune system. So I'm going to give you 3 secrets to how to build a well-functioning immune system. So one of the ways is that we need to clean up the terrain. And I'm going to go through that because I think that this is what this is all about. This is cleaning up the terrain. And it's a different paradigm. So I'm going to go through that, what I mean by clean up a terrain. We need to balance and diversify the microbiome. And I think that I always feel that Light Seller and Malcolm's audience really has a good grasp of what the microbiome is, but I'm still going to talk about it because it's still very important. And the other thing that helps with a well-functioning immune system is for us to be actually metabolically flexible. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this. So these are the 3 secrets. Okay, so there's basically 2 different paradigms when it comes to pathogens in our system. There's the germ theory, and then there's the biological terrain. And the germ theory is the one where like conventional medicine or allopathic medicine is really based on. So this was, you know, based on Louis Pasteur, and he talked about how disease is caused by external pathogens. And, you know, it's a concept that we are victims of germs. And I think that this is the paradigm that most people in our society are kind of stuck in. It's that diseases come from outside of the body. And it also means that like diseases can strike anyone. And in order for us to be able to protect ourselves, that protection has to come from outside of ourselves. So it either comes from vaccinations, it comes from antibiotics, it comes from chemotherapy. Sterilizing. It has to come from outside of us. It can't come from inside of us.
Yeah.
And then there's this thing called biological terrain. And in our clinic, we say that we practice biological medicine. And when I say biological medicine, this is actually the paradigm that I work in and live in. So to me, it's all about biological terrain. But the paradigm that we are in is, you know, some of the main scientists around it is Béchamp. And he talked about how the microbe is nothing and the terrain is everything. And this is understanding that we are in control of our health. We are not victims of germs. That disease actually comes from within our body. And the way that we actually get unhealthy is only if we have an unhealthy terrain in our body. And in order to prevent disease, that we need to take responsibility for our own health. We need to be proactive. And yeah, we need to be proactive and play that proactive role in our health. And I know, like, this is what your audience is doing, and when they come into the light cellar, they're being proactive, and that's what my patients tend to be as well. They're proactive. What can I do in order to help my health? So understanding those two paradigms is so important.
Yeah, and it speaks to exactly how you started, you know, with that question. Someone with a cold comes into the room, you know, why do some people catch it and some people don't?
Yeah, exactly. The analogy I love to use is that you have a plant, and that plant, if that plant is sick, what do you do in order to help that plant to regain its health? Mm-hmm. Do you manipulate the plant? And I know you know the answer to this, but what you do is you change the soil. And if we change the soil to be healthy, nutrient-dense soil, we will actually allow that plant to regain its health. So we don't manipulate the plant, we change the soil. And I think that this is often a great analogy for what we need to be doing with our bodies, is that we need to change the terrain or the environment that our cells live in order for our cells to be healthy. And the other example I like to use is Bruce Lipton, who I think is a great scientist who was well ahead of his time. And what he was finding in his scientific research was that he would have cells, and what he would do is he would just change the terrain that the cells were in. And he found that if you change that terrain, that the cells could become bones, or they could become muscles, or they can become fat tissue. And so what he realized, that it wasn't about the genes, it was actually about the environment. And the environment actually determined the fate of those cells. So this, again, is all about the terrain that our cells live in. Now, one of the things that we do within our clinic, and I think I'll just pull these all up, is we look at the blood underneath the microscope. And when the blood is more inflamed, or if there's what we call an acidic terrain, what happens is that the cells start to stick together. And when they stick together, then it makes it challenging for us to get proper oxygen and nutrients into the cells. And then also it makes it challenging for those cells to move toxins and CO2 out of the cells. And you can see it on that first picture there. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to shift people from that more inflamed picture to this picture where the cells are nicely spaced out. And some of the things that can contribute to that inflammation and acidity in our system is things like food intolerances and immune challenges, like infectious agents coming into the body, heavy metals, environmental toxins, everything physical, everything emotional. So those are the things that can cause that blood to be congested. And I know, like, when I first looked at my blood underneath the microscope, when I was first learning about this, and I'd just graduated from naturopathic college, and I thought I was pretty healthy. I was in my 20s. I was a competitive athlete. I was just kind of removing major inflammatory foods. So I'd cut out like wheat and cow's dairy and sugar. I looked at my blood underneath the microscope, and it wasn't this perfect picture that we have down in the corner. And then I remember, like, just keep trying to work on it, trying to get my blood to look better. And then over the years, what happened was that I was then diagnosed with celiac disease. And then after I cut out gluten out of my diet and started kind of cleaning up my system after that, that's when my blood started to actually look good. So it's very interesting, right? So like your blood doesn't really lie. Like it's, you got to work on it, and you got to get rid of those major inflammatory aspects in the body in order for that blood to look good. And so, and sometimes it's a process, but, having your blood look like this is going to make a huge difference in how your body actually functions, because these are the cells that bring oxygen and nutrients to all the rest of your cells in your body. So this is your terrain, and we're always just trying to clean that up. So here's, I'm going to pause it in a sec. So just here's some ways that we want to do to work on building a strong immune system. And, I think it always comes back to basics to me, but we want to be eating whole, natural, organic foods that are free of the pesticides and herbicides and insecticides and don't have the GMOs in it. So they're the cleanest foods from the earth. We want to make sure that we're drinking lots of water, because our body is made of 70% water, and water also helps to make sure that we flush toxins out of our system. And we want to make sure that we prioritize high quality sleep. Oh, actually, let me just let that happen. Sorry, that I wanted to pause so you could read all of that. And so high quality sleep. Our body does a bunch of its detoxification while we're sleeping, during our sleeping hours. And we want to make sure that we're exercising on a regular basis. Physical activity helps to get that immune system stimulated. And I think it's important to know that, like, some physical activity is good, but if we do too much, that it can drain our system. And so it's kind of like finding that right balance of physical activity, because I think that sometimes people take that to the extreme, but in that sense, they're actually wearing down their immune system. And then so important is that we need to be getting fresh air. We need to be getting outside. We need to be getting some sunlight. Ideally, we want to be connecting with the earth, right? So whichever way we can do that, whether we're walking barefoot on the grass or whichever way we can connect with the earth, doing some gardening. Tough for us to walk on a beach, but walking on a beach is a great way too.
I've actually seen blood cell analysis where they've taken it someone kind of pre and post grounding.
Oh, yeah.
The earth, and it actually helps change the blood even in that moment during grounding.
Yeah, because we exchange some of those electrons with the earth, and it's so important. Like that's what we were designed to do. We're designed to be connected to the earth, but now we live in that concrete jungle, right? Where we are not connected to the earth, right? We walk on the sidewalks and on pavement and in buildings and on carpets. So in our homes, and we're just not as connected with the earth as our bodies are designed to be. So yeah, we are definitely healthier when we're more connected with the earth.
Yeah, as well as increased exposure to EMFs as well. So not only we less connected to the earth, we're more exposed to radiation from various things, electricity and so on and so forth, cell phone radiation.
Yeah, and that definitely counts. I count that also as like that environmental toxins. The EMFs fit into that picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, yeah, as I'd say, especially in the last 50 years, we just have even more of that electrosmog, and yeah, so it's just making it more challenging for our bodies to be able to function the way they're designed to function.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so one of my favorite topics is skipping over. Let's pause that. Is the connection between the immune system and the microbiome. I know this is one of your favorite topics too, Malcolm. But it's also understanding that about 75 to 80% of our immune system is actually housed in our gut. There we go. So the microbiome is, it's this ecosystem of bacteria and fungus that live within our gut. It's about 1 kilo. There's lots of those microbes. There's more genetic material than there is in the human genome. And we actually need a lot of diversity of those microbes in our gut. In order for us to be have normal physiological function, but also for us to have a good, healthy, functioning immune system. And the microbiome is what it's doing is it's regulating inflammation. And if you've ever heard that inflammation is the cause of all chronic disease, the microbiome is regulating that immune system, right? That inflammation. So think about how important that is in terms of our health and making sure that it's diversified and that it's balanced. And it's regulating our immune system. It's educating our immune system. And the microbiome itself is this dynamic entity. So it's influenced by so many different things, but from our genetics to our diet, to our body's metabolism, to our age, geography, to different stressors in the body. So there's so many different influences on that microbiome, and it is dynamic and it is changing. But it is something that we really need to be focused on and working on all the time.
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of that two-way. It's influenced by things, and then the way that it influences our body is just incredible.
Yeah, it's why it's one of my favorite topics of research, is because of how interesting it is, because of how dynamic. Because it has this top down as well as this bottom up effect on the body. And, I have this picture of what it's doing is that microbiome actually orchestrates how our immune system functions. So it's like playing that big role. It's telling our body what to let in and what to let out. It's that big education of our immune system. And how we build this healthy microbiome. Basically, there's two ways that we build this microbiome. One is by the foods that we eat. That helps to make sure that we build a strong, healthy microbiome. And the other way that we get connected and we build that microbiome is through our environment. So this actually made, when I was doing this, I thought of that picture that you posted of your baby playing in the dirt. And I think you wrote Immune 101.
Right. Yeah. How to build a, healthy functioning immune system or something to those effects. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
And
amazing to watch him. I mean, it's not just dirt, it's everything, right? It's how babies explore the world. They're always just
yeah,
putting things in their mouth, and it's not to eat it, it's just part of that exploration. It's how they're navigating through the world, and they're building their microbiome, they're educating their immune system. It's so much information kind of receiving and storage is happening through that process every moment.
yeah, and that's exactly how our bodies are designed to be. So like your son is doing that intuitively. This is what our children are doing intuitively, and we have to let them do it. We have to let them play with the dirt and the soil and being in contact. And don't worry about hand sanitizing everything, because this is how we educate and we build a stronger microbiome. And by doing that, we're building a stronger immune system. And so
Yeah.
I did add a little bit in there about what's going on. But, it does make me worry that, what we're doing right now in terms of social distancing and being so hyper vigilant about disinfecting everything, how this may lead to a decrease in exposure to microbes, a decreasing of the biodiversity of our microbiome, which overall is going to be depleting of our immune system.
Yeah,
And
100% agree with this. I mean,
yeah,
as you say it, like we're hyper vigilant and disinfecting, and these
yeah,
disinfectants, right? I mean, it says on the bottle, kills 99.9%, of organisms, like the good ones, the bad ones,
yeah, yeah,
everything. So, us as individuals, from the air to surfaces, and especially children, they're not being exposed to those organisms, even in the soil, right? And we know
yeah,
that the health of our soil is determines the health of our plants and the foods that we eat, but also, yeah, on that microbial level. And if we're not receiving that, it's been shown that, indigenous cultures, people who are, of the land, who live closer to
yeah.
the land, a more natural lifestyle, their microbiome is far more diverse than those
Yeah.
that live in this modern lifestyle. And that is a severe disadvantage to our health.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that most people were already kind of using like sanitizers a little bit too much. But I think with what's going on right now, people are like overusing it. And I know, like, even in our clinic, like part of the guidelines is that's what we have to do. And so I'm doing that even within my clinic right now. Like after every patient, I'm cleaning up the clinic, wiping things down with a disinfectant, right? And I'm just like, oh, I don't know if this is, I know that this is not a good thing for the future of our microbiome. So, yeah, I think we're going to have to be really careful with that and really do the work to make sure that we keep that microbiome healthy. But those are the two ways. So environment and food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll
Yeah.
just mention, I had another conversation with Sasha. It was during the community immunity series, and because you had talked about how even just environment influences our microbiome. So the
Yeah.
fact that we're inside in these highly sterilized environments, constantly, versus being outside where there's going to be much greater exposure to natural microbes that are positively influence our microbiome. It's just another further, not good.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because that's what's educating that immune system, right? Is our communication with the environment. So yeah, we don't want to be inside a sterilized bubble. We actually want to be outside. And again, as much as we can communicate with nature and in the environment, this is going to make our microbiome more diverse and healthier.
And again, you said it, 75 to 80% of our immune system, this is it. This is the ground zero, right?
Yep, very important. Okay, so how do we know if we have a healthy microbiome? So one of the best ways that we know is how our stools look. And I think we need to get comfortable about talking about our stools. And if you're ever a patient at my clinic, you'll know I always ask about stools, because stools give me so much information about what's going on inside of you. And I think we really have to make this a normal part of our society. And I think that this is probably something we need to do starting with children. And I know in our household, I've definitely, with my daughter, I've definitely made it sort of normal to talk about stools. And I know sometimes people will be at our house and my daughter will be like, "Mom, come look at my poo. Looks awesome." And people are like, "What is she saying there?" So it's definitely not a norm, I know, in most people's household, but our bowel movements tell us so much about what's going on internally. And the closer we are to that ideal, closer we are to that ideal picture is what will tell us that we have a more balanced microbiome. And that's one of the big reasons I ask about it, because I want to get an idea of how balanced is that microbiome.
Yeah, and just for some ideas of, because my wife, she's a second generation colon hydrotherapist. So
Yeah.
she brought that, kind of more familiarity and comfortability talking about it in our household. And there's books out there for, one of the children's books that we got for our daughter, way back in the day was Everyone Poops.
Yeah. It's very important for us to, because I'll have patients who are so embarrassed to even talk about it, or they'll be like, "Oh, I don't know, I don't look." Right. And I'm like, well, that's your assignment. Like, next time you come see me, you have to come back and tell me what it looks like. Because this is so important to your overall health and me understanding how your digestion is actually working.
Yeah, I mean, it's a basic form of communication, how your body, how you can, learn about it and how it is communicating with you. This is one of
Yeah,
the
exactly.
simplest forms of language and how we can understand our body.
Yeah. So we always got to be talking about poop. All right. So how to build a healthy microbiome. So other than playing with dirt and playing with soil and getting out in the environment, the other ways, and just realizing that the microbiome, if we have a healthy microbiome, then we can build if we have healthy soil, then we can build a really healthy garden. And so I think of soil as the terrain, and then the healthy garden is the microbiome, is all those different microbes. So that's how I think of it. So taking a high quality probiotic, so healthy probiotic is the good healthy bacteria. And then you also want to be incorporating some natural probiotics. So, which, the best in the city is at the Light Cellar, which is true. I'm not just,
Yeah,
saying
no, for
it.
sure. We
Yeah.
make a point, we only use local produce, naturally fermented. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So those are the best live bacteria. You want to get your fermented vegetables, so like sauerkraut and kimchi. The fermented dairies, you just want to make sure that it's not from cow. I say to stay away from the fermented cow dairies, but there's ones that are from sheep or goat, or you can also get it from like coconut, and then there's water kefirs. So there's different ways. And then there's like fermented teas like kombucha. So you want to be incorporating those natural probiotics into the diet. And then we also want to be incorporating prebiotics. And what prebiotics really are is prebiotics are the food for the healthy bacteria, so that we can help the healthy bacteria to repopulate and grow. And really, most of those prebiotics are just they're the fibers from our vegetables. So we want to make sure that we're eating a lot of vegetables to give those probiotics some food to be able to grow and repopulate. Okay, and then we're on to the third secret, which is becoming metabolically flexible. And to me, this is like a pretty surprising statistic, to one extent or another. But what they found is that 97.8% of Americans, and I'm sure Canadians are probably really close to this number as well, are metabolically inflexible. Okay, so I want to, yeah, I'll talk more about what that actually means. So my definition of health is adaptability. So the way I define health is our body's ability to be able to adapt to stressors, so that stressors come into our environment, or if we have stressors that are internal or external, that our body can adapt to those changes. And then our body can have these self-healing mechanisms. So the more adaptable our body is, the healthier we are. Now, that's really what metabolic flexibility is about. So it's about our body being able to use sugar as an energy source, or to use ketones as an energy source. So our body is easily able to shift. So I'll tell you my personal experience with this is that, for many years I've been, gluten-free, cow's dairy-free, so, and sugar-free. So major inflammatories out of the diet. And then as I was reading, I was kind of learning about grains and the problems with grains. And I kind of slowly kind of phased grains mostly out of my diet, except for things like sushi, right? And then, and that's how I was eating for a number of years. And then I was also learning about fasting. And as I learned about fasting, I started to incorporate fasting into my diet or into my lifestyle. And then I was learning about things like the keto diet. And I thought, and I'm like, oh, well, what do people eat when they're on the keto diet? And I was like, oh, like I'm pretty much eat, like I pretty much eat like clean proteins, clean fats, and vegetables. I'm like, I pretty much eat a keto diet. So I'm pretty sure I easily could be in ketosis, right? So then I buy a keto meter to just check and see if I'm in ketosis, and I check it, and I'm not, right? So, and then I just started to actually follow it pretty strictly, and I'd keep checking it, and I keep checking it, and be like, okay, I'm still not in ketosis. And it took me probably like a month of doing like a strict keto diet with some fasting for me to like even shift into ketosis. So what that shows me is two things. It showed me that you need to test your ketones to actually know if you're producing ketones. And it also showed me that I wasn't metabolically flexible. And so I think that that's actually very important for us to be metabolically flexible, to be able to shift from using glucose as an energy source and ketones as an energy source. Because what they're finding is that is this insulin resistance. So if we have too much sugar in our system, that can contribute to something called insulin resistance. And what they've showed is that people who are insulin resistant can have an increased chance of that COVID-19 being more severe form. So, if we want to avoid that, then we need to make sure that we're not insulin resistant.
Right. And that last slide, that's the difference of what we keep hearing about. Okay, this is going to move through the population. There's debate about how much has it moved through the population, a certain percentage or don't show any symptoms. And then some people are so severe in symptoms, like death, right? In that sense. So
yeah. So
the real key. How can we be on that much of the side that it passes through us, and we've got this terrain that we're either asymptomatic or very mild symptoms, mild to moderate, and we move on.
Yeah, exactly. So we just want to make sure that our systems are strong enough to be able to handle it, strong and resilient. So I just wanted to talk about like what insulin resistance is. And basically what we have is insulin is a hormone. And what happens is that when we have sugar or glucose in our system, then insulin gets released, and then we have on our cells, we have these insulin receptors. And what should happen is that as we have glucose in our blood, the insulin would go into that insulin receptor, and then our body would allow that glucose to go into the cells. So this is what would happen if, you know, our systems were kind of working the way they should be functioning. But what a lot of people are is that they're insulin resistant. So that means that their body produces insulin, but it either those receptors are damaged, or that insulin just isn't that insulin receptor isn't working that well. So then what happens is that now blood sugars are actually just staying outside of the cell and actually not getting into the cell and being utilized by the cell. Now, so I also have a personal story when it comes to this one too. So I was invited to speak at, you know, this international conference in Puerto Rico. There's like great speakers there, and honestly, really honored to be just among one of those speakers there. And really, like, most of the speakers there were these people who were like ripped, like they had like the 6-pack abs, they're super lean. And, you know, I'm a little self-conscious to be there, just worried that I didn't look as healthy as these other speakers did. And I also know that, you know, that there's those people who look really healthy on the outside, but like, I know in clinical practice, when I see them and I take a look at their blood underneath the microscope, that their blood doesn't look as healthy, so they might not have as healthy a terrain. So I'm also aware that that what's on the outside is not necessarily tells you how healthy they are on the inside. But anyways, I was speaking to one of the other speakers, and I said, you know, I said, I'm one of those people who eats like super clean. I was doing the keto diet, but I'm a person who like doesn't lose weight on the keto diet, right? And she said, well, she's like, well, what do your blood sugars look like? And I said, well, I actually don't check my blood sugars. I said, I check my ketones, but I don't check my blood sugars. And she said, well, you know, what should happen is that, like, when you're on the keto diet, and especially when you fast, your ketones should go up and your blood sugar should go down, which kind of makes sense for being metabolically flexible. And so when I got home from that conference, I bought a meter that checks my blood sugar and my ketones. And when I checked that, I was finding that that when I would fast, my blood sugar would just basically stay the same. Sorry, when I was in ketosis, I was in ketosis, but my blood sugars just stayed the same. And then if I fasted, my blood sugars might come down a little bit, but they were still pretty high. They wouldn't really go down. And so, so this other doctor who actually I became friends with, I just told her what was happening, and she goes, you know what that means? She's like, that means that you're insulin resistant. She's like, that's very common in women over 40. And I was like, oh man. So that's something that, like, I know that, I know a lot of my patients, I work with a lot of my patients, and this is definitely an issue with a lot of my patients. So I've been working with them, but, you know, also kind of figuring it out myself by trying things out. So that's my story about insulin resistance.
So I'm curious. I
Yeah.
mean, so obviously you had a meter, and which is always good because that doesn't lie. That will tell you the exact levels that you're at any
Yeah.
given time. Is there any sort of a feeling or a sensation or symptoms that someone might be able to kind of at least have a like a hint into or a clue of like, oh, well, maybe that's what that is? Is there anything that would kind of lead to someone, or should just everyone get that test and begin to get those metrics, or is there something a little bit more kind of on an intuitive level that people can kind of tune into or feel into that might suggest that this is going on for them?
Well, I think that like one of the big ones is that, like what I see, like I see it in myself and I see it in my patients, is that it's the person who basically is like eating really healthy, exercising, doing all these things, but their weight is either creeping up or they have that inability to lose weight. So that's a huge component too. And people are like, oh, I haven't changed my diet and I just keep gaining weight. So I know, like, yeah, and I think that there's definitely a difference between like females and males when it comes to that, because I think that a lot of males, as soon as they do like the fasting and the keto diet, they're like losing weight, building muscle quite easily, whereas it's very different for females. That's at least been my experience with it. So yeah, I'd say that tends to kind of fit into the I'm doing everything right. I haven't increased how much I'm eating, and I'm still gaining weight. So that's usually it. In terms of what you're feeling, it's a good question. I think that yeah, I'd have to even think about that myself in terms of just knowing. I know that there's also things like just still having like cravings. So it's just that your body still isn't getting the nutrition, like your cells still aren't getting the nutrition that they need. So having various cravings throughout the day, still having that sweet tooth. So those would be, some of the things, but yeah, I think that, sometimes it can be tough to tell, but those would definitely be some signals that there's some insulin resistance going on.
Okay, right on. Thanks.
Okay. So some of the ways that we can be improving and becoming more metabolically flexible and improving that insulin resistant picture. One of the best ways is intermittent fasting. And when we see intermittent fasting, it means that that you're not doing the exact same thing every day. So, because sometimes people will say, oh yeah, I do that intermittent fasting thing, and I do like the 18-6 is the most common one. And so I just eat between this time and this time, or I do the one meal a day. But you don't want to be doing the same thing every day. You actually just want to be changing it up from day to day. So I think that that's important to understand about fasting. You're not doing the exact same thing every day. You're changing it up. Doing like a cyclical ketosis. So this is a little bit different than what most people think of the ketogenic diet. It means that you are cycling in some grains into the diet. And I usually do it as kind of a refeed to kind of like feed the gut flora. And infrared saunas are great ways to become more metabolically flexible. Cold showers, as much as people kind of hate those cold showers, turning on cold at the end of your shower can actually also help your system to function better. And then doing exercise. So and really it's doing exercises that help to build muscle. And so I know when I say that, a lot of people just think of weightlifting, and weightlifting is a great way, because when we activate those muscles, then it does help with that insulin resistance picture. But you could also do it by doing things like using your body's own weight. So, push-ups, sit-ups, planks. So you don't need a lot of like fancy materials in order to do things that help to build muscle. There's lots of ways to do that. So I just want to like put that in as exercise that helps to make sure you're building muscle, you're working your muscles.
Yeah, my Laura and I, we've been using our baby.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like slowly increasing weight, Okay, it's like
exactly.
minutes now.
Yeah, exactly. But even like above the head, right?
Yeah, do squats and all kinds of
stuff.
stuff.
Squats. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So those are great ways, right? Yeah, and exactly. And you're going to get stronger as he gets bigger.
Yeah, I still do it with my daughter. She's 15, No, it's joking.
Still, yeah, exactly. That's why you got those big pipes. You're just hiding them right now with the
right. Yeah.
and then high quality sleep. So can't talk about can't skip the importance of how important sleep is to how our bodies function. If we're not getting proper sleep, our body just doesn't function at optimal capacity. So making sure we prioritize sleep is going to help our bodies to be able to do what they're designed to do.
Yeah, and I'm really glad in kind of the health food world. I know that for a time, and maybe it still exists in certain pockets, it was almost like a badge of honor of like, well, I only need to sleep 4 hours a night. And it's it's like, the less you sleep, the healthier you are. It's like, no.
No, it's very important to get lots of sleep. And for sure, like there are people, I'm not going to say 4 hours, but yeah, there are people who can function quite well on like say 6 hours of sleep. And then there's some people who need like 9 hours of sleep in order to function optimally. So
the main thing is no one should ever feel guilty about, taking the sleep and that they need, each night.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So our body has an amazing ability to be, it's doing this. Okay, let's do this pause. Okay, so our body has this amazing ability to be able to fight infections and heal itself. And what we need to be doing is really harnessing and supporting our body's ability to heal itself. We need to support that body's like innate intelligence. And here's some truth about what's going on in the world right now. I think that this, and I've said this before to you. I know I said this when we were talking about when we first chatted about this for the immunity community. I think that this pandemic is really an indication of how we as a population have a poor immune system. And the truth is that at some point, all of us are actually going to be exposed to this pathogen. And our best defense is going to be a well-functioning immune system. That's going to be our best defense against what is going on in the world right now.
Yeah, I hear you. That's well said. Well said.
Yeah. Okay, so just to kind of review what I was talking about, these are the 3 secrets. We need to clean up that terrain. We need to balance and diversify that microbiome the best we can. And we need to become metabolically flexible, because the people who are more insulin resistant are the people who are going to be more at risk. And just, in terms of getting more information from me, I have lots of free content on my website. You can sign up for my blog and newsletter on my website. We got lots of articles and recipes. I'm on social media. The big ones that I'm on is Instagram and Facebook. I haven't really done the TikTok too much like you have. And then I've got a podcast on iTunes. So if you're into consuming information, then you can listen to my podcast. And I'm also on YouTube. So those are, lots of different ways that I'm just trying to keep everyone informed. And then if you want, you know, more information from me, I have some online courses, and you can just, they're really, if you go onto my website and go to online courses, you'll see all the different courses that I offer. And then what I also offer is, and I'm super excited that we're now opened after being closed for 6 weeks, that we are now open and doing one-on-one consultations. And with that, what I can do is like individualized treatment plans for what your body needs. You know, we do pretty advanced testing and offer different therapies just based on what your body's needs are. And again, the best place to go to find out all that information is on my website, which is advancednaturopathic.com. And that's it for today. So thank you so much. If you have questions, you can just send me an email. I think we're going to stay online here if I didn't go too long and answer some questions. And as always, I want to thank Malcolm and the Light Cellar for inviting me to speak to you guys.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's a pleasure and an honor. It was great to have you on, and it's just in this last moment as you're, you know, sharing about the services that you offered. I mean, imagine if, you know, the government is, and, you know, the health authorities, as much effort, as much resources and time and energy we've been investing into all the things that we've been doing. And imagine if every person, instead of being given a check, you know, to do whatever with, was actually given an appointment with you or someone like yourself, right?
Yeah.
Truly, like, understand this level of information, you know, get testing, understand about, you know, where we're at with our level of health and therefore our risk, and then develop out a plan to move forward. It just, that would be amazing. That would be a game changer, and the government is sparing no expense. So I think it could be entirely possible. And yeah, that's you know, a future that's it's a bit fanciful, but hey, not.
No, I think that would be money well spent. And I think that, you know, like that's actually what I've been kind of not saying that necessarily, but I've been saying, like, why aren't we saying to people all the ways that you could, you know, you could be boosting your immune system, you know, while everyone's, you know, hidden away in their houses. But, you know, that information isn't going out. Instead, we're being told there's nothing you can do to boost your immune system. I can't talk about boosting my immune system, right? So
yeah, it's true. It's totally backwards. So here we are, but you know, that's the way it is in society and life. And the good news is you don't have to wait for the government, you know, for their or for their check. You know, those of us that have taken our health, you know, into our own hands, we realize it is our own responsibility. There are so many resources. You know, Melina just listed a huge amount. Her Instagram is awesome, her YouTube channel, and all those courses, as well as going to see her to get that personalized attention, that personalized insight that she will provide. So yeah, thanks again for being on and being, you know, taking this path in this life to help everyone out. So appreciate you sharing your evening with us.
Yeah, thank you so much. I always appreciate being part of like your talks and being part of Light Cellar. Like, yeah, you guys always have an awesome audience, super well-educated audience.
Yeah, for sure. All right, right on. So we're gonna sign off on Facebook here. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Give it a like, share it out, and definitely be sure to connect with Melina as well. All right, bye for now.